What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with NIO, Tesla, SPY, and the overall market. I'm also going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be very important as we have important data coming out that could shake the way the market ends up moving. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon in just about 12 days from now. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So, as far as NIO is going, I am going to say that the chart looks a bit more concerning to me because we have this distributive pattern that's been developing. And then instead of getting a nice break of our EMAs, we're just continuing to reject off of them. It's been like this for the last couple of weeks. So, for instance, NIO did get this breakout move, then rejected. We came back up to our 20 EMA, the green line. Then we rejected. We came up to our 50 EMA, then rejected. And then, excuse me, just yesterday, we came back up towards our 20 EMA and rejected again. So we have this gap down here to fill around the 4.3 area. There's going to be a risk of this continuing to fall towards 4.3 if that fails. And then don't forget that on the bigger time frames, there are some gaps to fill in the lower fours and also the 3.94 area. So 4.3 fails on NIO, this could dip even more. So I just want to say there is a risk of us coming down to fill this gap over here. When I zoom in, you guys can see this quite nicely. And I do see a risk of that downside just based off technicals. Now, as far as NIO goes, even though there is that risk, I just wanted to say that NIO is talking about their products such as the ET9, and we have NIO Day in just a couple of days from now. So even if we do dip a little bit more approaching NIO Day could be a big catalyst to move the share price, and we'll see if it causes some kind of bounce or not. NIO has announced that they're aiming to become profitable by 2026. That's a very, very nice goal. And remember that 2025 is starting in just a few weeks. So a little bit over a year from now, they're hoping for profitability, which isn't too far away. So that's something I really hope for. I know it's been delayed quite a bit, but if they do reach that state, that's going to be very, very amazing. A lot of these car companies need to scale up a lot more to reach that. And most EVs are not profitable. It's going to take a while for them to really get there. And that's the thing you have to remember. It's very difficult to get there as well. Tesla just became profitable a few years ago, so it took them a while as well. So it's no surprise. And let's give them the time they need. And I believe that they will see a lot of nice growth. Now, right now, we have 27 million in volume, so very low volume. We'll see what kind of reaction we get moving forward. Goldman Sachs maintains a sell rating for NIO because of the fact that their margins are not that great. And because of the fear of interest rates and how they're going to be moving, the price price ratio is also kind of like down right now. That's because NIO does not have a lot of strength. Fridays tend to be green about 53% of the time. And we tend to see more volatility at 11 a.m. and also during the final hour of the day. Besides that, there's not really anything else that's too significant that's going on for the share price. Now, for tomorrow, we have big data coming out. We have the PCE inflationary data coming out an hour before market open. Tomorrow is also Friday, December 20th, 2024. So at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, an hour before open, we have this data. Core PCE, month over month, is expected to be at 0.2 to 0.3%, the same as before. Month over month for all items is expected to be the same. And then on a year over year basis, we're expecting 2.5% for all items PCE, and then 2.9% for core PCE. So we'll be watching to see what these numbers look like. I'm a little bit concerned because when CPI came out, it did go up a little bit higher than expected during the last report. So for the month of November, we did see an increase in inflation. This might cause the numbers for PCE to not look that great. So I just want to give you guys a warning about that. So we'll see how it goes for them. For earnings, we had Nike and FedEx. Both of them are jumping because of good news. Nike had decent earnings. Even though revenue was down year over year, it's about $12.4 billion. It technically was a little bit better than what estimations were at $12.1 billion. And then their EPS was a nice beat, topping analysts at 78 cents per share. Their guidance was pretty decent, and that's why the share price is still doing well. Despite the fact that we saw a previous downside, they're still holding up. FedEx, we have some big announcements that was made by them. They announced that they're going to be spinning out their freight business. Big news for them. EPS was above expectations. Revenue was just at expectations. And then for guidance, everything was very, actually a little bit better than what we expected beforehand. So not too bad here. So not too bad from FedEx. That's why the share price is still holding up because of that big news. The market is very fearful right now. There's a lot of fear that's still perpetuating. There's no sign the market's ready to bounce yet, so just be careful with this coming into mind. Momentum is extremely fearful as we saw this big rejection. And then the puts and call option ratio is going back up. Now we're back to fear because there's been a lot more put buying, especially over the last like 24 hours. A lot of more people have been buying puts after seeing the FOMC results, and that's what's partially dragging the market down. And the VIX remains elevated, did dip a bit as you predicted, but then we'll be watching to see if you get another breakout phase. So please keep that in mind. What do I see for tomorrow? NIO looks a little bit more bearish. It is favoring a gap fill to about 4.3 and a little bit more downside, especially if we lose that support. But whether or not that happens also depends on PCE data. For SPY, we rejected off our 200 EMA to come back down. If we can't reclaim 591, we're going to be at risk of dipping lower, back down towards 584. We'll have to see if we bounce off that. That's our last main support. If we lose 584, I think we could be dumping to fill the gap towards 576. So be careful. We haven't lost 584 yet to turn super bearish, but I just want to say there's still weakness on this chart, which is favoring downside for a test of that support. Whether or not that happens depends on PCE, so we'll see about that. ES also got rejected. If you guys look at the charts, we are favoring a move down towards this low around the lower 5900s. So it's still showing weakness after the big red bar. Will we bounce above 6,000 after PC, or will we just continue this rejection? Could go either way, but we are favoring downside. I'm going to be 100% honest about that, especially as we have this imbalance in the low 5900 area. So be careful with that. Nvidia tried to bounce, but here's the concern. Just like NIO, we're rejecting off our 1520 EMAs over and over again. And notice that today we tried to bounce. We tried to get back above our 20 EMA and we failed so far. So if we get a decent PC and we bounce, we have to break 133 to break our 20 EMA and start pushing for 136. If not, if we reject here, we could be dipping back down for 128 or so. So keep that in mind, guys. We could push and then start dipping lower. It does look a little bit more bearish in terms of its trend, but that's going to depend on our data. Bitcoin has dumped to about 96,301. It's going to try to rebound for possibly the 98,500 area. If we rebound here, then reject, we could be retesting the support, then dumping. So be careful as the downside looks a little bit more pivotal. So watch that very, very closely. There's still that risk. Tesla is looking so-so. It's stuck in between supply and demand. We have 445 as our main resistance, and we have 420 as our main support, which is where we dumped to already. This does look like it wants to push back up to about 445, but I want to say that if we can't break that, so far the trends, we had a high here, came down, made a lower high. We need to break this high to turn back up to try to reverse this trend. And if we push to 445 and reject, then it could continue to dip, so be careful. We're technically in a downtrend, but we have to see if Tesla could break this high tomorrow. It depends on our data. I do anticipate it's going to push a little bit higher, so we'll have to see if we could break past that or not. So look for a test of 445 at the very least tomorrow, and then we'll see if we reject or not from there. If not, if we break past that, we could attempt to get back to these highs, but then we'll see if we come short or not. So look for a push tomorrow, and then we'll see where we end up rejecting. I can't predict it perfectly because it depends on PCE. NQ looks a little bit more bearish. It's favoring downside for 21,300. If that fails us, we're looking for 21,200 right over here, which is where we had previous support over there as well. So there's going to be a risk of some downside. The QQQ is also getting rejected here, so we're going to be watching to see how 512 is going to be holding up. It's also possibly dip a little bit lower. If that fails us, we're looking for 510. So be careful. There is that risk of the QQQ dipping as we're getting another rejection. We were not able to hold above 521 very nicely, so it's not looking that great. We'll see if we end up losing the 514 area or not. Otherwise, there's going to be that risk of a little bit more downside. So please keep that in mind. We're trying to hold the support right here, very close to 513 to 514. Otherwise, this is favoring a bigger move down. So be careful with that. Aapl had a high at 252, came down, tried to rebound to make a lower high. Now we're just shuffling here. So we'll have to see if we bounce off 250, start pushing back up to the imbalance, or if we reject here and start losing 246. It could go either way, so we'll be watching these levels just to be safe. The IWM Russell 2000 is rejecting. We're going to be watching to see if we could hold 220. If not, this is going to be dumping all the way down to about 217.5. If we bounce off this, we're looking for 222. Look for a rebound and a potential rejection. We are making a lower high here, so this could favor downside, but we will see just to be safe as we're seeing some new developments. For Coinbase, we're on a bit of a downtrend here. We're going to be watching to see if 273 holds. If it holds, we're looking for a move back up for 280. If it doesn't, we could be dipping back down towards the 260s. So I think coin is going to attempt a rebound tomorrow to retest the 280 area. But then if we get a rejection, there's going to be a risk of us once again continuing to fall. We came down, made a lower high and came down, so we might attempt to come back up. If we can't surpass this high, it could just be another lower high before it starts dumping. So keep that in mind. Amazon tried to bounce and now it's starting to slow. Here we have a gap to fill below. This is favoring that if we can't get back above 224 tomorrow, we favor a move back down to 221 to fill that gap or below. For Meta, we tried to rebound and only to reject again. So we need to try to hold around 595-ish. Otherwise, I'm looking for a move down to 586. It is looking weaker, technically speaking. This does look like a head and shoulders, so it favors downside a little bit more. Microsoft is looking weaker. We tried to bounce only to hit our 50 EMA and reject. So if we can't break past that, we're looking for 432. And then Google, same thing. We're rejecting here. I'm going to be looking for a test of 188. We'll see if we bounce or not, but there could be some downside. So we're seeing all of these things going on. We'll have to see what happens, at least for the future. There is a risk of downside in the markets looking at the trends, but I'm not 100% convinced yet because it depends on PCE data. So we'll see what that looks like. So be prepared for that going into tomorrow. But for now, just know there is weakness in the markets, which is no surprise. I thank you for listening. Please have a good rest of your day, and I'll be back tomorrow for another update. Thank you and peace out.